Welcome back to the Metal Gear The Complete Story bonus videos. Yeah, I know guys, I can't believe I didn't do it sooner. Seriously, you all kept asking and I kept doing other videos. So how can I do a Metal Gear series and call myself a superfan without giving you the story of the woman that started it all? The boss. All of the information gathered here is from the Metal Gear wikis, which has been gathered from the games and the novels. Born in 1922, she is the daughter of one of the original members of the Wise Man's Committee, and grew up in the care of the Philosophers. Her father cared for her greatly, sharing with her the greatest secrets of the organization. As a penalty, he was killed, unbeknownst to her. During World War II, the boss was invited to the SAS as a special advisor, which resulted in the creation of her first unit. It was during a snatch and grab mission which her unit performed that she began to develop her style of CQC fighting. It was in 1942 that the boss, then known as the Joy, founded the Cobra unit. The unit consisted of the pain, the fear, the end, the fury, and the sorrow. The Allied victory was attributed heavily to the work of the Cobra unit. By the end of the missions, the entire Cobra unit looked up to her as their mother and their leader. It also began her relationship with the Sorrow. In 1943, the boss was sent in to assassinate one of the Manhattan Project scientists, but her cover was blown due to discovering that she was pregnant with the Sorrow's child. With her cover blown, a shot was taken at her unborn child, but she managed to avoid it, though the bullet still managed to graze her skull. This placed her into a coma for 3 months, and it took her a further 6 months to recover. She grew to regret failing this mission, as she always felt that the Cold War was her fault because she failed to kill the scientist. She felt that her child living made her partially responsible for everything. It was during the invasion of Normandy that the boss gave birth to her son, who would later become known as Ocelot. She was in the middle of the battlefield and went into labor, requiring a cesarean. This left her with a snake-shaped scar. Unfortunately, she was so disoriented from the event that her new baby boy was taken from her with little effort. It was at the end of the war in 1947 that she disbanded the Cobra unit. She was disheartened over everything that had happened, and she also left her relationship with the Sorrow. Around 1951, she began to participate in a secret project run by the US government, and she met with a 15-year-old John, aka Jack, aka the future Big Boss. They would develop CQC together, and she would spend nearly a decade with him as his mentor and his trainer. The time they spent together meant everything to Big Boss, and he would go on to say that due to this training, part of him belonged to the boss, and that they were more than friends, soldiers, or lovers. A series of events happened that would require her to leave Big Boss behind to carry out new missions. She was sent in to conduct secret operations in the Soviet Union. Shortly after these missions, though, she volunteered for the Mercury Project, and through this, met Strangelove. The mission was to see how well the human body could withstand being in space. It was due to this that the boss was unofficially the first woman in space. It was here that the boss's dream became just that, her dream of the future. Seeing the world, she envisioned the world united as one. Due to her space capsule being a prototype though, as it entered it crashed upon landing and she was thrown from the wreckage. This resulted in her being injured, and ultimately she was knocked into another coma. This coma would last 6 months, and the US military would cover up the entire event, stating that she had a hand in the Bay of Pigs operation. When she awoke, she found that the Russians were the first published humans into space. The US administration resented the fact that the Russians got credit even though she, a US citizen, was the first into space. Since they had to cover up everything due to her crash, they could not publish such facts. As a result, they sent her into Soviet territory again to have her kill off a sleeper agent that she placed there during her previous missions. The Sorrow had sadly returned to Soviet territory after the Cobra unit was disbanded. He had spent his time trying to corrupt her sleeper agent. Their reunion was not a happy and joyful one though. The Philosophers could not have both the boss and the Sorrow live through this. They sent a death threat on their child, citing that one of them must die if he was to live. The boss and the Sorrow's son, that was born during the Normandy invasion and would later become Ocelot, was the leverage they placed on guaranteeing only one of them would survive this. The boss and the Sorrow met atop a local bridge where they discussed what they were going to do. How could they save their son and both survive this? They realized eventually that they couldn't, and one of them needed to die. There was no fight in the end. The Sorrow accepted his fate, and it ended with the boss shooting the Sorrow right through his eye, at his own request. 2 years later, being such a powerful psychic and medium, the Sorrow would return from the dead as a spirit and follow the boss. Following this event, while trying to distance herself from the whole ordeal, the boss contacted an old comrade, Major Zero, and formed the Fox unit with him. After forming the unit, she went underground as an agent in Soviet territory. This leads us to Snake Eater, where in 1964, the CIA, which by this time was partially controlled by the Philosophers, became scared of the boss's overwhelming charisma and began to realize that they could not bring her down even by having her kill her own lover. This was the beginning of the end for her though, as she was ordered to recover the Philosopher's legacy from Gru Colonel Volgin. She had to trade her way in and pretend to defect to his army to even get close to him. During this, she was participating in the Virtuous mission undercover, which reunited her with Big Boss. She was to help him get into the facility and accomplish his mission, so that she could then later betray him and give Colonel Volgin 2 portable nuclear weapons. Showing that she was willing to defeat her old disciple and give over the weapons the US trusted her with cemented her position in Volgin's group. For now. This is where the boss becomes doomed and the Philosophers get their wish of having her removed. Volgin takes the nuclear weapons and launches them at his own Russian people, ending up killing thousands and thousands of people. Big Boss watched in horror as the weapons went off, and Russia blamed the US for the nuclear explosions. As the boss was deep undercover, and only a few agents within the CIA knew that she was a double agent, the Philosophers were able, under the guise of the US, to use this to their advantage and dump all of the blame on the boss. This gave the US a chance to redeem themselves to the Russian by sending Big Boss back in. But this time, it wasn't a simple snatch and grab. He was to kill the boss, and this would prove to Russia that the US had no hand in the nuclear weapons and prevent a nuclear war. The boss understood that she had to give her life and even eternally sacrifice her reputation in order to save the world from a nuclear war. To help meet this goal, she secretly helped Big Boss as best as she could while maintaining Volgin's trust. She almost gave away the fact that she was working against Volgin when she hesitated in cutting out Snake's eye. She managed to keep her cover to the very end though. Once Big Boss had completed his mission, it ended with him and the boss in a white field of flowers. And she turned to him and reminded him of his duty as a soldier. And that was to complete his mission at all costs. With that, she engaged him in a final duel. Big Boss was still refusing to kill her, but she was fully intent on trying to kill him. She even ordered a bombing to begin near them so he wouldn't be able to stall any longer. As they fought, she began to lose due to Big Boss's increases in his skill on this mission. She explained to him all the questionable practices that the US had done to her, describing the perceived portrayal of the Cuban exiles in the Bay of Pigs situation, and explained how she had been at the Mercury Project. Upon falling to the hands of Big Boss, she managed to pass the Philosopher's legacy to him, which was her ultimate mission during this whole thing. She collapses and Big Boss can't believe what he actually did. The spirits of the boss and the Sorrow finally get to rest in peace, and Big Boss sees them fade away together at last. The Philosophers got their goal thanks to Volgin, and the charismatic soldier known as the boss was in fact removed. But her passing began a chain reaction in so many individuals' lives that it would be the ultimate demise of the Philosophers. Big Boss and Major Zero would soon begin to try and accomplish the boss's dream, though neither truly knew what her dream really was. This would be the catalyst to set off the entire saga. It wasn't until the very end that the Big Boss finally understood the boss's will. He explains to Solid Snake with his dying breaths. It's not about changing the world, but about leaving it as it is. By respecting the will of others, and believing in one's own will. To find out what Big Boss and Major Zero did for their war, go check out our 5-part series explaining the whole Metal Gear saga. As for the boss, her legacy didn't end here, but you'll have to find out how it affected everything over the main series in all of those main videos. Oh, and the son she had? Like I said earlier, it turns out to be Ocelot, who becomes Revolver Ocelot and eventually Liquid Ocelot, and in the very end, the ultimate villain of the series. But if you want to know his horrible life, go check out our Ocelot video, because while he was the villain in the end, he definitely did not intend for that. And with that, we close this episode of the Metal Gear The Bonus series. Next time, we're going to be covering Metal Gear Rising and Raiden's character. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the channel, and go check out our Facebook if you want up-to-the-minute news from Eligible Monster. Also, please check out our Kingdom Hearts The Complete Story and our Bioshock The Complete Story. Maybe spend some time on that Zelda one. Oh, and we've also got Resident Evil going right now. And very soon, you're going to start to find Pokemon and Assassin's Creed. We also managed to do some improv comedies over some rather funny games. Why don't you check those out while you're here? And we have an entirely separate channel dedicated to Let's Plays. Go check those out if you've got nothing better to do with your time. Thank you, and have a good night.